Start the recording. Okay. So we did discussed about business requirements, functional requirements, and non-functional requirements in our previous class. So today's class is just sort of we are going through the slides with some examples about business requirements, functional and non-functional requirements, and what are the differences. So uh, let's get started. So first of all, the specification of the requirements, they are basically, there are two different levels of that, right? As we discussed last time, one is the business requirements that are very high level, right? And then we have functional requirements and non-functional requirements, and then um, use cases, right? So all these are various, I would say, dimensions of requirements specifications, right? So business requirements we talked about are very high level. It talks about what needs to be done. It doesn't talks about the solution. Functional requirements and non-functional requirements are documented as part of the use cases, and they talk about how. So how the business requirements will be implemented. They talk about the solution most of the time. So we talked about briefly with the about these two type of requirements, or these two type of dimensions per se. Let's see what else we have. So I think to give some examples, let's say the business requirement is we need to establish an online customer portal. So as you can say, that is the requirement which tells about what needs to be done, right? So we need to establish an online customer portal, right? And then the second requirement is the portal should list our products. So think about, let's say, Amazon of the world, right? So think about in Amazon's context, or anyone creating an e-commerce portal. So requirement is we need to establish an online customer portal, and then the portal should list our products. As simple as that. That's simple, business requirements. Now the example of functional requirement, or I would say how you will achieve it, would be the system shall be able to register a product using the following fields: name, details, price, category. The system shall support that up to 5 pictures can be listed per product. So in the business requirement, you're telling what needs to be done, and then you are talking about how exactly that needs to be implemented, or how that exactly that needs to be developed in our system. Again, these are examples, but I was trying to give you a side-by-side comparison of that how you would do that, or would you would differentiate in this. Okay, so I'm pausing for any questions. So moving to the next slide. Again, we talked about functional business and functional requirements. So we didn't talk about non-functional requirements. So non-functional requirements are sort of qualities of a system, as it is mentioned, right? Um, they are not actually doing anything functionally, right? They are just sort of, to put in a simple way, um, speed of the system, how fast a web page is loading. That could be a non-functional requirement, or that could be a requirement that the web page on that product or on that app should load within 3 seconds, right? So functionally, you are not doing anything, right? The loading of a web page is a functional requirement, but loading it within 3 seconds or a particular timeline is a non-functional requirement. How secure your website is or your app is, that you're not able, someone cannot hack to it, right? Is a non-functional requirement. Functionally, you are not doing anything special, but it's a as I think in the examples, it's throughput, usability, reliability, scalability, and security. So if you see any requirements which are uh, functionally not doing anything but are related to these things, like usability, the products that Apple creates, right? They are very user friendly, right? Users can easily, without following a user manual, can can understand how to use it, right? So it's not a functional requirement. Functionality is same. We will click a button to do something, but how easy it is to find that button is a usability requirement, and hence how easy the entire app or web page or whatever we are creating, right? It is related to non-functional requirements, or will be mentioned as part of the non-functional requirements as well. Okay, so pausing for any question. So this is sort of an example showing the relationship between your business requirements, functional requirements, and how all of these are tied up, right? So let's say B1, the requirement, business requirement is the portal should list our products. As simple as that. That's the what. The functional requirements F3 is the how. The system shall show up to 5 pictures per product, right? The non-functional requirement is the product listing shall be updated real time if new products are published. So now you can see the relationship or the specification of non-functional requirement. It doesn't talks about any functionality. It just talks about sort of implementation of the functionality. So we know that you can show up to 5 products and you can upload pictures of the 5 products or whatever it is, right? How soon you can update it in real time or not real time, right? And if new products will be published as soon as they are uploaded. So the non-functional requirements talk about how soon, how fast, how scalable, right? All this type of thing, right? And then use case, again, we talked about triggers, precondition, postcondition, and then normal flow, basic flow, alternate flows, all those type of things. That all comes under your use cases. How the user will interact with the system as part of that use case. Okay, so that's what all we are trying to cover here as part of business functional non-functional requirements. Okay, so let me pause for a moment. So the business requirement, again, I will just reiterate that the reason behind the business requirements is that how what is needed from the business side. And the business requirement document is a document that documents what all business requirements are there, and then we get it approved from the stakeholders or the client, whoever is the approving party. So they approve the business requirements, and then we go to the next level, that is the functional specification document. So the functional specification document that has use cases, FRs, that is functional requirements, and non-functional requirements. The format could be like you can go to a different project or a different company, they may be following different formats. The formats that I shared last time was one of the example. But I think as long as you understand what is the reason why we need a functional requirement, why we need a non-functional requirement, and what is the significance of use case, then it should be just following the format, and you should be comfortable, and you should be able to use any format of document. So business requirement, we are clear. The reason for functional requirements is so that we can document the solution such that it can be developed. So each FR, a functional requirement that you will write, should be complete or clear in itself. It should not be vague. It should not be ambiguous. It should not be like if two people read, they may mean two different things to two different people. It should be that is the responsibility of the business analyst, that you write very clear, crisp requirements so that people can just read your document and understand everything that you're trying to convey. It should not be that you're writing something and you mean something else, and two people may understand, third person may not understand. So that is your functional requirements. You're telling the developer what to be developed. You're telling the QA what to be tested. So it should be everyone should be able to understand it the same way. Same is the case with non-functional requirements, right? Where your security team or your usability team will be able to understand what you meant by this requirement and what you're trying to achieve, right? Use cases are important because not only you are just defining the functional and non-functional requirements, you are walking the developer, the QA, whoever is reading the document, you're walking through them that, okay, first login, then click here, then do that, and then you're documenting different flows that are possible. So that when by just reading the document, someone can understand, okay, it may happen that someone entered username and password. It may happen that your password is expired and you have to reset the password. Or it may happen that your password is good and username is good, you are able to log in successfully. Or it may happen you forgot your password or you want to change your password. So your use case should cover step-by-step guidance uh, with basic flows. That is the happy path. That is a path that will take you to the goal, the post condition that you want to achieve. Or there could be n number of happy paths. There could be n number of I would say negative scenarios in which you don't reach the goal that you were supposed to reach. So all these things uh, help us document the functional specification documents and business requirement documents. So I will take a pause here. So as I was talking about the qualities of a good requirement, right? It should be complete, it should be unambiguous, mandatory versus optional should be very well mentioned, whether a requirement is mandatory or optional. Right? Simple and clear, traceable and verifiable. So we will come later on traceable and verifiable, but right now these are some rules which I think I would say initial one document that you will work as a business analyst, try to follow these rules, and I think then it will be natural. It will come naturally to you. You don't have to follow this or keep this handy throughout your lifetime. I think this is just for initial one document, and then it will be like it will come naturally to you. So specific, the requirement should be specific so that it could be properly documented. It should not be vague in any way, or it should not be generic, I would say. Okay. Measurable, of course. You should be able to measure the success criteria of the requirement. So, like in Agile, we talked about acceptance criteria. In general, also, when you write a requirement, you should always have in mind that, okay, what I'm trying to achieve out of it. What will the reader of the requirement understand that, okay, when will this requirement be complete or true, right? So you should word your requirement in a way that automatically the reader is able to understand that okay, if this happens, if the user is able to log in, that means my work is done, right? Something like that. So it can be measured end of the day. I think attainable is requirement should be possible to attain. I think similar lines, right? It should not be that it cannot be it should not be an impossible requirement which cannot be built or is not technically possible. Again, you will not do that as a business analyst. It should be all pre-discussed. So hopefully you will not document anything that is not even achievable by your team. So attainable, relevant. Uh, so it is very important to understand which use case you are documenting, which user flow you are documenting, and whether the FR, the non-FR, whatever it is, right, functional or non-functional requirement that you are documenting, is it relevant to this use case or not? Because there might be some other things. So let's say you are documenting a login flow, right? When someone is log in, what happens, right? So if you're writing a requirement about, let's say, the website logo, right? That the logo should be green color. It is not relevant, right? Or user can click on the logo to do something, to go to home page. It is not relevant to the login use case because it might be relevant somewhere else in some other use case, right? But you should not write requirements which are not relevant because when a use case is developed and tested, sometimes it is done use case by use case. The system is developed by, let's say, two use cases, three use cases. It's not developed all at once generally. So your use case should have requirements which can be tested along, or which can be developed tested along with that use case. Okay. Uh, Timely, of course. This is just uh, saying that you should make the requirements available on time, early on, whenever possible, right? So, if you're following a agile methodology, so if it's like a 2 week or 3 week sprint, so you should be able to make sure that your requirements are ready uh, uh, beforehand, so that your sprint or your other people are not getting delayed just because of your requirements. Okay, let's see what else we have. Yeah, so traceable and verifiable. That's what one thing we are talking about. So there is a document or there is a artifact that is called requirement traceability matrix. So think about it. It is joining the requirements, uh, the functional requirements with, let's say there is a test case ID or whoever is testing, they have created a test case, right? So what they're trying to do is, so in a simple word, I'm not sure if I have the, yeah, let's say this is your RTM example.
Gurmeet, I have a question.
Just one second. So talking about the RTM, as you can say, this is just an example. You might see different RTM templates, formats used in different companies where you go. But the basic principle I will tell you, let's say this is a functional requirement, and then there are test cases. So this RTM acts as a bridge, or I would say a mapping between the functional requirements and test case. And I will tell you the most typical way it is used is that, so as a business analyst, you are maintaining the functional requirement list of functional requirements, right? So let's say there are FR1 to FR10, right? So and then against each FR functional requirement, the testing team, the QA quality assurance team, they will have one or more test cases. So the RTM is sort of a mapping between, okay, FR1 is tested by, let's say, test case 5 to 7 or test case number so and so to so and so. So the main use, there could be other uses based upon the template format, but the main use of this RTM template is that, okay, if a test case fails, right? If you're testing something and then it fails or it is not developed as it was should have been developed, you will immediately know which functional requirement is getting impacted, right? Because and then you can analyze, okay, if this functional requirement is getting impacted, maybe we have to push it on the next release, or we have to inform client that we will not be able to deliver it, or whatever it is, right? So it gives a, and there are tools for this, right? You don't have to do manually. As soon as someone say this test case fails and marks it failed, automatically triggers that so and so functional requirement at risk or is getting failed. So by maintaining this requirement traceability matrix, you can achieve that. Again, I would say this is the basic. Again, you can. What I've seen is sometimes people add business requirement as well in the picture. So there is a business requirement, then a functional requirement, and the test case. So what happens is, again, not only you can tell which functional requirement is failing, you can also tell which business requirement is failing, right? And then you have a running mapping of, okay, this business requirement translates to 10 functional requirements in this template. So there is no end how you are using it. Different companies use different formats, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to follow one or other formats. You can adjust yourself when you go to a company, and but the whole principle you understand why the RTM is needed and how it helps you. Okay, so let me pause for a question. Okay, so data dictionary. So again, this is a running list of all the fields on that are displayed on the UI. And sometimes, as a business analyst, you also define, okay, uh, what would be the length of the field and whether it will be required, optional, all those type of things, right? Again, it is mentioned as data dictionary. It could be like in my company, it is called user interface sheet, right? So it could be named differently, but think about it as a business analyst. You already told what is the functional requirement. You already non-functional requirement. You already talked about the use cases, that is the user flows. What will happen first? What will happen next? Now the elements, the screen elements that are there, you're also defining that, right? So as a business analyst, you are defining, okay, if the login button is there, what is the, or login, I would say the text box is there, what is the length of that? Is it a mandatory field or whether it is not mandatory field, right? And whether it can accept text or it can accept numbers or both. What is it, right? So that could be one of the things that uh, additionally on top of everything else that we discussed, you as a business analyst would be defining. Again, this example is little bit I would say little bit excessive because it says data dictionary. It might not be that you will be defining everything. You might be asked to define the elements that appear on the UI, the user interface. You might not be defining the hidden elements like auto number or backend IDs. You might not be required to do that, but at least on the UI, you should be you might be asked to provide the list of things, the fields that will be displayed, and then what is the underlying length and whether it is optional or required on all those type of things. Okay, so let me show you example how in my company I'm using it. Again, it is not called data dictionary. It is called user interface sheet. But again, we'll give you a good idea. Again, there is some background noise coming. If you could put yourself on a mute, please. See, just 1 second, guys. Okay, so can everyone see the Excel that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is typically what we use in our company, right? It's called user interface sheet, but we call it data elements, right? So element ID, this is just a unique number for our understanding. Figure number, this is the figure, or I would say this is the screenshot or wireframe that I've attached in the document about that page, right? In that document. So let me actually, I will just show you a document as well. But let's say upload documents is a label, right? So I've made sure upload documents, written it clearly. Is it a label? It is required or not required? It's not applicable because it is a label, right? So required and not required doesn't qualify here. And then it says that it is a page name values, right? So again, all these are labels. Pick list. So what is pick list? It's just the values in a drop down. So job update form, this, all are values. One of the values in the document description drop down. So you are not only defining that, you are also mentioning, okay, these are the all values that will come in the drop down, right? Let me go to some other example. Yeah, see, like date of birth. You are saying that date of birth is a label, right? And then you're saying that due date is a label and the format would be this. Expiration date is a label and the format would be this, right? So, sort of as a business analyst, you are not only defining what goes in the system, you're also defining what goes on the screen and how it should be looking. So let me actually see if I can open one of the documents and show you what the figure means. So what was the figure in this example? It was just a wireframe, but let me see if I can show you what the upload button and what we are talking about. Where were all this coming from? So so this is a good example. So when I was documenting this use case, I pasted this figure 8 in my document, the functional specification document, right? And then as a business analyst, I'm required to mention all the elements of this. So whether it is page name, whether it's a drop down value, everything. So that when someone is developing it, there is no confusion. There is no uh, uh, misspells. There is no confusion about what was required to be done. What were the values in the drop down? What was, whether it should be asterisk, which means required or not required, whatever it is, right? So as a in the form of this what you say, data dictionary or data element sheet, whatever you name it, right? You as a business analyst are required to publish these details as part of the functional specification document. Okay, let me pause for any questions. So we are talking about, so we already talked about the data elements. So if we have to talk about the error messages in the same sheet, so these all are maybe pages of the website, right? It might be different for different type of application, but let's say this is a page of a website. You first of all define what all goes on that page. You define the data elements, you define the type, you define the length and values that goes inside it. Then there's a section that calls error messages. So in my company, we do not repeat the condition when the error will come. We just refer to one FR number or functional requirement number, which already has explained the condition, so we don't have to maintain it twice. So we just maintain it once, and we just refer the FR number, and then we say, okay, this will be the error that will come, right? And then again, if it is multilingual site, then you will maintain it the English version, the Spanish version, and all this type of thing, right? So, but that is what the error messages are. Again, this is one example: error code, error description, and error scenario. Instead of error scenario, you might be, as I showed an example, it might be referring to one of the functional requirements, and then error message that needs to be displayed in that condition. Okay, so I'll pause for questions. So screen mockups is another thing that as a business analyst, you might be required to create, depends upon team to team. If you have like a dedicated UI person, then you may not need to create mockups. But in most cases, you will not have, and in that case, you will have to create some wireframes or screen mockups. There is nothing but as a business analyst, see what you did. So as a business analyst, first of all, you created use cases. You told, okay, these are the 10 flows that are possible. User can fall into one of the flows, right? So you explained that in very detail. Then you explained the FRs, non-FRs, right? You explained what are the requirements, the non-functional requirements, the functional requirements, right? You even added the data element sheet or the data dictionary, right? You're talking about that, okay, these are the screen elements, this is the length, this is the error message that comes out. You also told about error message. Now, even more spoon feeding is by creating the mockup. And as a business analyst, you create, okay, this is how the screen should look like. So the example that I was showing was created by a UI designer. I was fortunate that in that project there was a UI designer. But if there is no UI designer, you will end up creating wireframes. And we have a separate session for learning how to create screen mockups. It's not tough, but I think it's additional job that the business analyst has to do as part of the functional specification document. Okay, so that was screen mockup.